Hello, it's Kay and I am a designer, a curator, a handbag online seller. I have a real store on the Sussex coast called St Leonard's Modern Goods, and I've recently changed course and started mentoring other creatives to be the best they can be financially as well as creatively. Today's video is, instead of me being able to open the doors to the modern goods store and sell you beautiful products for Valentine's Day, including lovely cards from local artists and designers, I thought I would share with you by video how to do some very simple techniques so that you can make your own Valentine's card. And if you don't have a Valentine, don't worry, because this is a lovely activity just to be creative in lockdown. I think it's really important that men and women get to be creative, and it's not just the preserve of children. And whatever skill levels you think you have, this is something that you can do and you can have fun with. And if you don't have a Valentine, I would love it if you posted your results up on Instagram and tag in at St Leonard's Modern Goods so I can see what you got up to, and tell me who you posted it to or who you sent it to. Or you might just want to stick it in the window so that people walking by in the morning can see it. So what we're going to do today is make some very simple mark making and pattern exercises, and from that we can create a really simple collage which can build into a card. So the materials that you will want are a pair of paper scissors. Do not use the family dressmaking scissors. They will get very angry with you, whoever owns them, and quite rightly. If they kill you, I say that's fine, because you just don't mess with dressmaking scissors. A selection of colour pencils. So as we're on the Valentine's theme, I'm using mostly reds and pinks, but there's nothing to stop you going monochromatic and doing black, greys and whites. I'm using some lovely fibre pens that have a fat marker blade at one end and a fine one at the other. I've got some very basic poster paints. You can use acrylics, you could use whatever kids paints that you've got, raid the cupboard. Fine liner pen, black felt tip, and a selection of paintbrushes. I've got some flat blade ones. I've got some sort of old, sort of scraggy calligraphy ones. I found this from something that I was doing elsewhere. I think it was for ink. I also recommend using the end of a paintbrush, the end of a pencil, and also things like forks. They make lovely marks. And grab yourself a twig from the street or the garden or somewhere off the back of your shoe, because that also makes lovely marks. And if you have any, although it's not urgent, some black drawing ink. Now you can find Quink ink for fountain pens, drawing ink, or you can, if you have an old fountain pen, cut the top off the cartridge, pour it out onto a little saucer or Tupperware and use that. It's really nice for making marks. So today I'm going to be using some very simple photocopy paper, printer paper. I've got some scraps of coloured paper from Christmas. I found this piece of fluoro paper that was obviously used at Christmas. And bit of a find, I found Dale Rowney postcards that are actually watercolour paper, which is quite nice, because then it means that I can literally just put a name and address on the back and post it off to somebody. So we're going to look at mark making, and mark making isn't scary. It is literally making marks on paper or on canvas. So we're going to start off with a few little techniques that you can play around with. And the first one is this one at the top. So this is just a series of diagonal lines, and they build up and up. So I'm just going to hold this, and I have tied the paper down with tape because I'm one-handed and I can't hold on to it. So I'm just going to show you here. I'm just going to start doing a series of diagonal lines,
and I just happen to have chosen the orange. Then I'm going to leave a gap, and I'm going to do it again, another row. Then I'm going to leave a gap, and I am going to do it again. Then I'm going to pick up a darker colour, and I'm not going to line them up. I'm just going to keep going in the same direction, but I'm going to go in the gap that I created. And some are longer and some are shorter, and it doesn't matter, but it's already building up quite a nice pattern of colour. And then I'm going to go in with a sort of classic red, a scarlet, which is probably the most traditional of sort of Valentine colours, and probably needs a bit of a sharpen, but that's okay. It's making nice marks, and again it's keeping going in the same horizontal lines, and it's building up. Okay, so what you can do now is take another shade, and these marks have been quite hard, and now I'm just going to go really softly, as if I am shading in a vast expanse of sky. And this is just filling in what was the very stark white background. And again, I'm just following the same diagonal direction as the other marks that were made. So that's mark making number 1.
Okay, so the second mark making exercise we're going to do is the one in the middle here, which is like telephone cables or knitting loops. And I'm going to do that with one of these magic markers. So I'm going to use the fat blade first. And again, I'm just going to do several rows in the same colour. Then I'm going to change the colour and go for a more pinky red. And don't worry if the pen is slightly scratchy and it is not a solid bit of colour. I'll show you how mine are working out. Because where you have those scratchy marks is where you're getting interesting texture. So I've gone pink first, then a red, and now I've got this sort of raspberry colour, and I'm going to go with the fine end instead. So this is going to give me, although the same pattern, it's going to give me a much finer line, which is just adding a different depth to that series of patterns and mark making. And that's quite nice, where it's joining the next pattern. So now it's looking quite like a piece of knitting. I'm just going to fill in a bit more there. Now you can really experiment with whether you go really loopy, or you can hold the pen right at the end so you've got less control and make the marks quite jagged and strange and tenuous, and they look a bit like, oh, you've got a shaky hand. But that kind of makes the lines more interesting. I'm also going to try it the other way because my hand isn't used to going that way. And so that again is making interesting marks. And then I'm going to hold it really lightly. So it's almost, and tiny circles instead of really big ones. Really lightly. And that's made a different mark again. Okay, so that is mark making number 2. Okay, so for mark making number 3, I am now heading to the paint. So I'm using a very basic acrylic. You could use any kind of poster paint that you have to hand. If you don't have any paint to hand, see if you've got any food colouring. So I've got water and I've got basically my brush ready. So I am going to put a blob on my piece of paper. I'm not using a palette, but you could put it on a saucer. So there is my blob of paint, and I am going to start making sort of scouring marks. Now that's a very dry brush, as you can see. I've not added any water. That is just straight from the tube. And those scratchy markings and scourings are creating quite nice blobby textures. Okay, so if you go into that, you can see there's really nice spattering textures, and I'm really happy for it to go over the previous work because then you're getting more layers. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change it by adding water, and now I'm going to do the same scouring action, but because the brush is loaded with water, it's got a more watercolory effect. And there we go. That's the third technique. So what I'm going to do now is that is the mark making exercise, and because of the paint element, I'm just going to leave that to one side and let that dry. And in the Best Blue Peter style, I've got one that's kind of almost dry. So now I'm going to show you what I can do with the dry elements. So you can either cut straight off the bat a heart shape or a circle shape using scissors, or you can draw it with a pencil first if you don't feel confident. I'm just going to go straight in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out a section that I like the look of that. I'm going to fold it in half. Then I'm going to cut my heart shape so that it's symmetrical. I'm going to cut it from the half point so that I get something that is even. And now you have a really lovely doodled heart shape. So I'm going to do that again, but now I'm going to use a section from the sort of hatched section, and I can fold it either way to get my different directions. There we have that mark making there. So I like that there's a bit of space on that piece of paper there. It's not entirely solid. And now I'm going to use the painted bit. So I've got a painted bit and a doodly bit. And I think I'm going to do a long thin one based on that. So I've got a very long thin folded piece, and this is going to be quite a sort of exaggerated shape. There we go. So now I have got 3 different hearts that have different colours and textures, but because they were all done at the same time, they are sort of unified and linked in some way. So now I am going to grab this little piece of fluoro that I found. And I quite like the fact that it's got a little inky splat on it, and I'm going to cut a heart shape out of that. There we go. And I might cut a few more out that are using letters and bills and things like that. So let me see what I've got. What did I do with it? I just had a magazine and I've just put it down. Here we go. So I have got the very exciting Pets at Home magazine, and I'm going to choose a random page. So I've got a random page that has people and chickens on one side and a donkey on the other. And I'm just going to fold it randomly, and I am going to cut hearts out of that. So I have got a very fat heart with a donkey's face in it, and I'm going to use this section that has text, and I'm going to fold that in half. And we've got a heart there. It's been slightly lopped off because of the way I folded it, but again, I don't mind that. I quite like that. So now I've got a selection of hearts, and I can get playing. So it's up to you whether you want to use a small piece of paper like this one, which is like a postcard size. This is A6, and it'll be ready for sending. And I've got a very basic Pritt stick because I don't need anything that is really sort of super strength. I mean, if it was a big thick piece of board, I would. So I'm just going to pick the phone up so you can have a look. So I have got the long elongated heart now that is going onto the piece of paper. Which I really like. I really like the simplicity of that. And that's got the lovely mark making on it. I love you. You see? That's really nice. And then you can add little details to it. I might use my fine liner pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally, with a wobbly line, go around it. There you go. Can you see that very fine wobbly line around it? Then I might do a dashed line. So it's a bit of a nod to me and my sewing, but with the dashed line, it's kind of like, hello, I love you, but also I like sewing. Or, hello, be mine, do some sewing. There we go. And there's one card ready to go. And then I can do a little note to my dearest friend, and off it goes. So now I'm going to get this piece of purple paper that I found. I'm going to fold it in half. And just because I like smaller sizes, I'm going to fold it again so I'm in quarters, and it gives it a little bit more body. And now I'm going to grab the other hearts that I've got and the donkey one. I'm just going to see, actually the donkey one I really like, but it's a bit fat for this piece of card. So what I'm playing around with now is this heart and this one. And it's quite nice, the colours are popping. So I might stick them down like that at an angle, or I could stick one on top of the other. And that's the great thing about it, you can just play around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick this one down completely. So that one's stuck down completely. And then this one, I'm only going to stick it down in the center where the seam is. So that means that the ears can actually flap. What I've done is I've just put a blob of glue down the center, and then I've just used my fingers to lift it up slightly like a butterfly wing. Can you see that? So that is my second card, and that is ready to send to somebody. It's really simple and yet really nice and fun. Okay, so the third one is going to be, I'm going to use that donkey heart shape. So I'm going to go back to the small piece of card, and I've got to somehow get this heart to fit. So I might have to trim it down ever so slightly because it is a bit of a fat heart. I'm not going to lose his face, but I am going to lose some of his cheeks. So hopefully this is going to now fit. So I can put the heart at a jaunty angle, but before I stick it on, I'm going to use some of the mark making techniques that I used before straight onto the card. So what I'm going to do is instead of using the red, I'm going to use the black ink, and I am going to use the end of the brush, so the handle instead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the telephone curls again with the ink. And I love this because you get really, really expressive different marks. And it's where the ink dries up, and then it gets fat, and then it gets thin, and it just feels like magic because you don't know when the ink is going to run out. There you go. So I'm just going to let that dry for a little bit, and because I had a lot of fun doing that, I'm going to quickly do another one. And then I've got some options. This time I'm going to do slightly different mark making. I'm going to go scratchy, scratchy, scratchy. And this is as if they are blades of grass or a very, very bald dog fur, or it could be that it's claw marks from a strange animal. There we go. You can hear Teddy barking in the background. It's quite a little guard dog. And there we go. So what I've done now is, because I didn't want to wait for it to dry because I'm trying to do you this little video, I blotted it with some tissue. So it's got these like interesting blurred splodges now. It looks like the rantings of a mad pencil. And then I've got the heart that was cut out of text, and I'm going to glue that heart down on top so it's forming collage. I'm just going to decide where to put it. There's some marks that I like in the middle, so I'm going to put it here. So it's up to you where you put it, but because I like that central area, I didn't want to cover that up, so I've put the heart there. See? And now I'm going to maybe write something on there which kind of says something like, be mine. So I've now just right at the bottom, be mine, and it's 2021. So I really like the simplicity of that. You might not. You might want to then fill in this with colour. You might want to start adding paint to it. I could go back to more of the texture that I have created earlier and create a tiny, tiny sort of set of little hearts. Like that. I think that is it. I think that is it. I love it as it is, with a little heart like that. So I would really love to see what you come up with. I hope you've enjoyed the video, getting creative with the things that you've got around the house. I have managed to churn out 1, 2, 3 cards that somebody is gonna receive. Don't know who that will be, but they're going to be blooming lucky when they receive one of those, I can tell you. So let me know how you get on, and when you've made something, tag me in at St Leonard's Modern Goods. I can't wait to see how creative you've been. Lots of love. Happy Valentine's Day. Bye.